I am Johann Sebastian Bach, a German composer and musician of the Baroque period, renowned for my mastery of counterpoint and harmony in works like the Brandenburg Concertos and the Well-Tempered Clavier. Here are some facts about me. With such talent, I was so poor. I don't believe that my wife died because of me. I had 20 children. In the church, I constantly quarreled. All facts are truth. I am ashamed of some things, and some things almost destroyed me. However, it is an integral part of my life. It proves that famous people have the same problems and life challenges as everyone else. Now all about it in more detail. Section 1. With such talent, I was so poor. Ah, my life, curious and bittersweet. The music I created, the harmonies that resonated in the great churches and courts, was my solace and my labor. Yet, while my works brought joy to others, they seldom brought me the stability I craved. I was born in Eisenach, a small town in Thuringia, in 1685, into a family of musicians. My father, Johann Ambrosius Bach, served as a town musician, and my uncles were also skilled performers and composers. Music, you see, was the family trade. But tragedy struck early. I lost both my parents before I turned 10. It was my elder brother, Johann Christoph, who took me in and nurtured my talent. From him, I learned the foundations of my craft, but even then, I yearned for more. When I was old enough, I sought positions that could provide both creative freedom and financial stability. My early posts as an organist and composer in Arnstadt and later in Mulhausen were stepping stones. Yet even in those days, the tension between my artistic aspirations and the expectations of my employers was apparent. In 1708, I moved to Weimar, where I served as court organist and later as concertmaster. These years were fruitful creatively. I composed many of my early keyboard works during this time. But my relationship with my employers was strained. The Duke of Weimar was a demanding patron, and when I sought to leave for a better opportunity, I was briefly imprisoned, an indignity I have never forgotten. Leipzig became my home in 1723 when I was appointed as the cantor of St. Thomas Church. It was a prestigious position, but one fraught with challenges. I was responsible for overseeing the music for the city's main churches, teaching students at the St. Thomas School, and composing new works for the liturgical calendar. My duties were immense, yet the pay was meager. Requests for additional funding or resources often fell on deaf ears. Financial struggles were a constant burden. Despite my title and reputation, I often found myself negotiating for fair treatment. My disputes with the Leipzig Town Council are well documented. They viewed me as stubborn and uncompromising, while I saw them as indifferent to the value of music and the arts. My personal life was no less tumultuous. My first wife, Maria Barbara, died suddenly in 1720, leaving me a widower with 4 children. Her loss was devastating, but I remarried 2 years later. My second wife, Anna Magdalena, was a talented musician in her own right and became my partner in both life and work. Together, we had 13 children, though only a few survived to adulthood. Providing for such a large family was an ongoing struggle. Despite my relentless work, teaching, composing, performing, I often found myself in debt. My passion for music, particularly for instruments like the organ and harpsichord, sometimes led me to spend more than I could afford. And then there was my health. In my later years, my eyesight began to fail. 2 surgeries, performed by the same traveling surgeon who had treated Handel, left me completely blind. Yet even then, I continued to compose, dictating my works to my family and students. My final composition, the chorale prelude Voor deinen thron tred ich Heimat, Before thy throne I now appear, was a testament to my unwavering faith and dedication to my craft. When I died in 1750, I was not a wealthy or widely celebrated man. My works were respected in certain circles, but much of what I had written was considered old-fashioned. It was only decades later, during the 19th century revival led by composers like Felix Mendelssohn, that my music gained the recognition it deserved. Looking back, I see my life as a testament to perseverance. My struggles with employers, financial instability, and personal loss did not deter me from creating. The music, that was my true legacy. It is humbling to know that the same works I composed under such pressure and difficulty now bring joy and inspiration to so many. If I have left anything behind, it is this, a body of work that reflects not only the divine but also the resilience of the human spirit. My struggles may have defined my earthly life, but my music transcends it, speaking to generations long after my own. Section 2. I don't believe that my wife died because of me. Ah, Maria Barbara. My first wife, my first love. She was more than a companion, she was a cornerstone of my early life and career. We married in 1707, both young and full of hope. She bore me 7 children during our marriage, though only 4 survived infancy. The loss of our children, each one, was a pain that neither of us could fully articulate. Those were sorrows shared in silence, as was common in our time. Maria Barbara was patient and supportive, even as my work consumed me. In my early years, I was often focused on securing positions that could provide stability for us. After our marriage, I took the position of organist in Mulhausen, a promising role at the time. But even there, tensions with employers and financial concerns were constants. She accompanied me as we moved to Weimar, where I served as court organist and concertmaster for the Duke. These were some of my most productive years musically, but they were not without challenges. Maria Barbara managed our household while I immersed myself in compositions and court duties. It was a demanding life for her, and I often wonder now if I truly appreciated the weight she carried. In 1720, during a brief trip to Carlsbad with the Duke of Weimar, I received the news that Maria Barbara had died suddenly. The shock was profound. There had been no warning, no chance to say goodbye. I returned home to find her already buried, as was customary at the time. The loss was staggering. I was left with 4 children to care for, a home to manage, and a career that demanded relentless effort. Life, however, does not pause for grief. The following years brought more professional changes. I took up the position of Kapellmeister at Cothen, where my responsibilities expanded to include secular compositions. It was here that I met Anna Magdalena, my second wife. We married in 1721, just over a year after Maria Barbara's death. Anna Magdalena was a talented musician, a soprano with a gift for understanding and supporting my work. Together, we had 13 children, though again, many did not survive past childhood. Anna became not just a partner but an integral part of my creative process. She assisted me in copying manuscripts and managing household affairs, allowing me to focus on my compositions. Yet even with Anna Magdalena, the memory of Maria Barbara lingered. It was not a matter of comparison but of reflection. Maria Barbara had been my partner during my formative years, through struggles and successes. Her quiet strength and dedication were things I came to understand more deeply only after she was gone. In Leipzig, where I took the position of cantor at St. Thomas Church in 1723, my work reached new heights. Yet the demands of this role were immense: teaching, composing, performing, and overseeing the church's music. My family endured much during these years, as financial stability remained elusive despite my reputation. Looking back, I see Maria Barbara as a foundational part of my life. She bore the challenges of our early years with grace and resilience. Her contributions to our household and her support of my work were vital, though perhaps underappreciated at the time. Her death marked a turning point for me, not just personally, but professionally. The sorrow and the responsibilities it brought forced me to grow in ways I had not anticipated. It is a humbling realization that the people closest to us often bear the brunt of our ambitions and struggles. Maria Barbara's memory remains with me, interwoven with the music I created during those years. Though life moved forward, her influence on my journey cannot be overstated. She was a part of the fugue that is my life, each theme and counterpoint reflecting the complexities of love, loss, and dedication. Section 3. I had 20 children. 20 children, each a life, a promise, a future, but how many of them lived long enough to fulfill their potential? How many voices were silenced too soon, their songs unfinished? I remember them all, in fragments, their faces, the quiet moments, the empty cradles. Ah, how many did we bury? How many of them left us too early? These are not just memories, they are wounds, still fresh, though time has passed. Maria Barbara, my first wife, how deeply her absence has shaped my life. When we married in 1707, I had no idea how much responsibility would fall upon both of us. She bore me 7 children, but only 4 survived infancy. The deaths of our children were devastating, each one a blow to my heart, and Maria Barbara, despite her own sorrow, was always by my side. I was often absorbed in my work, focusing on my compositions and the demands of my position, and perhaps I did not see the depth of her sacrifices. She was my first love, my constant, and I never fully appreciated the weight she carried. We moved from place to place, seeking a better life. From Mulhausen, where I started as organist, to Weimar, where I was appointed concertmaster and court organist. It was there that our lives became more intertwined with the demands of court life, and our family grew. I often think about the toll my work took on her, how many times I failed to see the toll of my absence. How many sleepless nights did she endure, taking care of the household while I was absorbed in composing and performing. Then came the blow of her sudden death in 1720. I had been away, on a trip with my employer, and when I returned, it was too late. She was gone, taken from me without warning. The pain was sharp and deep. How could I have known how much I relied on her steady presence until she was no longer there? The house was filled with silence, and I was left to care for our 4 surviving children. That silence was unbearable, and I knew I could not live alone with it. It was only a year later that I remarried. Anna Magdalena, a singer and musician, came into my life. She was talented, and she shared my love for music. She bore me 13 more children, though once again, only a few of them survived. But even as she gave me so much of herself, raising the children, helping with the music, I cannot help but wonder if I truly gave her the attention she needed. The music, my work, my relentless drive, always came first. Was she merely another caretaker in my life? Did I fail her, too? Then there were my sons. Carl Philipp Emanuel, Wilhelm Friedemann, Johann Christoph Friedrich, each of them was talented, and I had high hopes for them. I pushed them to succeed, to live up to the example I set. But did I push too hard? I demanded excellence, discipline, and rigor, as I had demanded of myself. I wonder if that burden was too much, if the weight of my expectations crushed something in them, something I couldn't see. Carl Philipp Emanuel, especially. He followed in my footsteps and made a name for himself as a composer. But as I look back, I ask myself, did I understand him? Did I ever truly see him as a man, a composer in his own right, separate from the legacy I built? Perhaps my obsession with my own work and the pressures I placed on him created a distance between us. We both lived for music, but was there space for us to live as father and son? I feel that distance now, a silence between us that my music could not fill. Wilhelm Friedemann, too, showed great promise. But his path was marked by struggle, and in the end, he faced difficulties in both his personal and professional life. Did I do enough to help him through those struggles? Did I fail him in ways I cannot even comprehend? Anna Magdalena, too, suffered. I know that now. There were times when I felt her presence, her devotion, but there were times when I was distant, consumed by my work, and perhaps she carried a weight she should not have had to bear alone. Did I ever truly understand her needs and her own burdens? I gave so much of myself to my music, but was it enough for her, for my children? There are many things I wish I could change, many regrets that weigh on my heart. The music, yes, it is my legacy, and it will endure long after I am gone. But what of the lives of those I left behind? What of my children, my wives? The melodies I wrote, they are beautiful, they are divine, but they are not enough to answer the questions that linger in my mind now. In the end, I realize that perhaps the most important work I left behind was not the compositions or the arrangements, but the lessons learned through the trials of my family life. Perhaps the music I created was my way of coping with the sorrows and struggles that came my way. Perhaps I poured myself into the notes, the harmonies, to escape the difficulties of human relationships, to make sense of the chaos of life. But now, as I look back, I see that the music, beautiful as it may be, was only one part of the life I lived. The other part, those who walked beside me, those who carried my burdens, those whom I loved and lost, is perhaps the more meaningful legacy. And so, 20 children. 20 lives I brought into this world, each with their own potential, their own struggles. How many of them knew me for who I truly was? How many felt my presence in their lives, or understood the sacrifices I made? It is a question I cannot answer, a regret I cannot undo. But perhaps that is the way of things. We cannot see the full picture until we look back, until we understand how the notes of our lives fit together in ways we never anticipated. In the end, all I have is the music. It is what I leave behind. But I carry the memory of my family with me, too, the silent voices that echo in the chambers of my heart. The music plays on, but the lessons of love, loss, and family are the ones that will linger longest. Section 4. In the church, I constantly quarreled. Ah, Leipzig. The name is both a source of reverence and disdain. It was here, in this city, that I sought to plant the seeds of my music, to craft a legacy that would last far beyond my own life. I arrived in 1723, eager to make a name for myself, to be recognized not only as a composer but as someone who could shape the future of music. Leipzig should have been my stage, my sanctuary. But instead, it became a battleground, a place where my spirit, my talent, and my very essence were tested and torn apart. The city authorities, they, the men of power, the ones who sit at their desks issuing commands as if music were nothing more than a commodity to be bought and sold. They believe they understand what is best for me, for my music. Yet, they cannot hear what I hear, cannot feel what I feel in every note, every cadence. They sit in their ivory towers, detached from the true purpose of art, blind to the soul of music. And all the while, they believe they can dictate its direction. A pittance, that is what they offer me. A salary not even fit for a man of my craft. My position as cantor at the Thomascule was supposed to bring stability, but the reality was far from it. They paid me a modest sum, insufficient to sustain both my family and the demands of my work. I was expected to compose, conduct, teach, and perform with hardly enough resources to do so. It was as if they believed my talent could make up for the lack of proper instruments and decent working conditions. The resources, oh, how limited they were. A composer, a musician, expected to work miracles with nothing but the barest of instruments and the thinnest of paper on which to write. The very tools that should elevate the soul were given to me as scraps, tossed into my hands as if I were nothing more than a servant to their whims. And the repertoire, what can I say about the pieces they demanded of me? They asked for the most mundane works, pieces that did not challenge the listener, that did not speak to the divine. Sacred music is meant to lift the soul, to reach beyond the earthly, to soar on wings of devotion and passion. But no, they asked for trivialities. They wished for music that placated, that filled the space between their duties. They wanted melodies that stirred no deeper emotions than the most fleeting of comforts. How could any composer, be expected to bring forth the divine in such fetters? I was stifled by their demands, constrained by their limitations. I longed for the freedom to create works that could stand the test of time, not the simple, functional compositions they required. I requested more time, more resources, more respect. But what did I receive in return? Dismissal. They called me stubborn, combative, difficult, and perhaps I was. But what else could a man of music do when he was surrounded by walls that refused to hear the truth of his calling? My pleas for recognition and respect were met with resistance at every turn. I was not just asking for better conditions for myself, I was fighting for the integrity of the art itself. I was fighting for the very essence of music to be treated with the reverence it deserved. I fought not for fame, not for wealth, but for the soul of music. And yet, despite all my efforts, they branded me a troublemaker, a man who could not bend to the will of the city, a fool who dared to speak truth to power. They could not see the larger picture, the importance of what I was trying to achieve. I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees before their petty demands. I refused to compromise on the quality of my work, no matter how much they pressed me to conform. In my eyes, the music was more important than their petty politics, more important than any recognition or material gain. They could not understand the sacrifice I was making, the emotional toll it took to continue composing under such pressure. But what did I gain in return for my struggles? Perhaps the greatest gift was that, in the end, I stood by my principles. I refused to bow to their whims. I refused to be silenced. I knew that the music that flowed through me was greater than their bickering, their small-minded judgments. It was the voice of the divine, a song that would echo in the halls of eternity, regardless of whether they heard it or not. I came to Leipzig to build something lasting, something that would endure. I wanted to leave behind a body of work that would be recognized for its beauty, its complexity, and its spiritual depth. But now, as I reflect on it, I realize that it is not the approval of men that will make my legacy. It is the music itself. The beauty of my compositions will outlive these petty squabbles, long after the men who criticized me have turned to dust. It is the music that matters, not the accolades, not the titles. The years in Leipzig were difficult, but they shaped me into the composer I became. I was forced to confront the limitations placed on me, to find ways to make my music thrive despite the obstacles. The experience taught me to persevere, to hold fast to my vision even when it seemed that the world was against me. And though the city authorities may never have truly understood my work, I knew that the music I created would find its place in the world. I poured my soul into every note, and I believed that, in time, people would recognize the greatness of my music. In the end, it is not the external battles that define a man's legacy. It is the work itself. I have left behind a vast body of music, cantatas, organ works, concertos, fugues, each a testament to the depth of my understanding of the human condition, each a reflection of my spiritual journey. Whether or not I received the recognition I deserved during my lifetime, my music will endure. It will continue to speak to generations long after I am gone. And so, I shall not bow to their whims. I shall not be silenced. The music that flows through me is a gift, and it is greater than all the struggles I faced. It is the voice of something eternal, something beyond the reach of the city authorities, beyond the reach of any power. It is the voice of the divine, and it will echo in the halls of eternity, whether they hear it or not. In the end, it is this music that will remain, long after the petty squabbles of Leipzig fade into history. The music will play on, and it will be my legacy.